Okay, so I thought I'd look at a recently played game um, at the Bilbao Masters between Magnus Carlsen and Sergey Karjakin. So, Magnus Carlsen opens with e4. Now we see c5 from Karjakin. So this is we're transposing into a Sicilian defence here. So maybe with something like g6, bishop g7, d6, knight c6, etc. Obviously there are many variations associated with the Sicilian. So now we see knight f3 from Magnus Carlsen. Now d6 is played. Now c3. So this is already looking like a Ponziani opening from white with this c3 move. So we immediately see knight f6 from Karjakin. So sort of looking like a delayed Alapin in this position. So now bishop e2. Obviously if knight takes e4, then queen a4 check, so picking up the knight. So clearly that is not possible in this position. Not a bishop d7, we just take on e4. So clearly that's not possible. So obviously that isn't what was played in this position. Instead we see g6 from Karjakin, so with the intention of fianchettoing the bishop on this diagonal, and now white castles. Now bishop g7, so bishop b5 check, knight c6, now d4. So white is now attacking black centre with this d4 move. So wouldn't you agree that white seems to have a very nice grip over the centre here after this d4 move? So we immediately see queen b6, bishop a4, and now c takes d4. So black is obviously trying to maintain his control of the centre here, and white immediately recaptures, and now black castles, and now we see d5. So attacking the knight on c6. So now white has seems to have very good control of the centre in this position. Now it's interesting that Karjakin actually moved his knight back to d8. Maybe an alternative might have been to play something like knight e5, but no, that is not what was played. Instead he played his knight back to b8. So white currently has an excellent grip over the centre, and now we see knight c3. So defending the pawn on e4. Now bishop g4 is seen from Karjakin. So this pin might be pretty awkward for white, and obviously Magnus takes this into consideration and immediately refutes the bishop with h3. Obviously bishop h5, this is just completely losing, because obviously there's g4. So obviously, that's pretty obvious, anyone could see that. So anyway, so the bishop takes on f3, queen takes f3. Now my knight black brings his knight to d7. and now rook b1, so defending the pawn on b2. And so now white is looking to develop his dark square bishop. So now we see rook c8 from Karjakin. So bishop c2 is played. Now knight e5, queen e2, knight fd7, now bishop g5, and Magnus immediately, Karjakin kicks the bishop away with h6, bishop h4, now g5, bishop g3, and queen a6. So now black is now offering an exchange of queens, and Magnus immediately, he avoids the queen trade with queen d1. So Magnus is clearly looking to keep the queens on the board in this position. So now we see rook c4, king h1. So Magnus considers the necessary threat. Magnus considers the potential threats against his king. And now we see rook a c8. So black is doubling up on this c file here. So he has pressure down the c file. Obviously, if the knight moves, black can take on c2 and win the bishop, and well, obviously be in a completely winning position. So this pressure down the c file might prove to be relatively awkward for white. Obviously, as the knight's pinned on c3. So now we see f4 from white. So obviously, if the knight moves, there's bishop d3, which obviously is losing the exchange. So obviously, let's look at this. Obviously, there's bishop d3 in this position, so this is immediately losing the exchange. Obviously, if white doesn't so obviously the engine recommends to take on c3, but white clearly now has the advantage. Obviously this isn't played, but this is a variation. Obviously, if black doesn't respond in the correct way. Black immediately takes on d4. Sorry, it takes on f4. So we see g takes f4 from black. White takes, and now queen b6. So now white has a number of alternatives in this position. So you can play something like, I don't know, bishop b3. But this isn't actually what was played. This isn't what was played in the game. Instead, we see queen h5. Now knight f6. Queen f5. Queen d8. Now bishop b3 is played in this position. Yes, we see rook d4. Now bishop takes e5. So white has now eliminated the knight on e5. And now, after white recaptures, we see rook d1 from Magnus Carlsen. So now he's challenging the rook on d4. Now we see queen d7. So black is again offering the exchange of queens. Now it was possible to take on e5 in this position, but instead we see queen f3 from Magnus Carlsen. Now rook b4, rook d2, rook f8. Now g4 is played, so this is clearly very aggressive play from Magnus Carlsen here. this g4 move.